Good morning still, everybody, and welcome to our monthly Lunch and Learn with the Osceola School District. My name is Soren Richardson, and I am the co-director at PEN, Parent Education Network. And today with me, I have from the Osceola School District, I have Stephanie Bednar with me. Good
Yes.
morning, Stephanie.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you for being here with us today.
Sure. Do you need, well, I can just tell you, I am the speech language PT and OT program lead for Osceola County School District. So we service the students here for all variety of related services.
Great. And then when does parents connect with you?
We service children in our district from, well, Early Steps refers them from 3 until 22.
Okay.
So they connect with me through all schools and all ages pretty much.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being with us today. And with us today also we have Jennifer Sisia. Do I say that correctly?
Close enough. Chicha.
Chicha. Okay, there we go. Son Jennifer Chicha, and she is an autism disorder specialist with UCF card. April being Autism Awareness Month, we wanted to bring Jennifer here with us to give us an overview of what are the services and programs that UCF card currently has. Before I pass the floor to you, Jennifer. I would like to do a quick overview of FND. For those parents that are here with us today that does not know us, we are your Parent Training Information Center in the state of Florida. And we are funded under the U.S. Department of Education and the U.S. Department of Health, specifically under OSAP. And we are a nonprofit organization. We are written within IDEA, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, Part D. So, because of the grant that we get, all the services that we provide to parents are always free. Also, we were founded 40 years ago in 1985 by a group of parents that have children with disabilities that were looking for information, resources, and mutual support. 40 years later, we are doing the same work on a much larger scale. So we have the whole state of Florida that we serve as the PTI. And that's what we do. We share information and vetted resources. We provide trainings like these webinars, conferences, and we provide individuals assistance. Also, we share our lived experience with parents because most of our board members, staff members, management team, we are parents of a child with disability. Myself, I'm mom of a 9-year-old boy that happens to have Down syndrome. So we share that lived experience with you, what we have learned along the way, and what we are still learning to help you navigate special education in the state of Florida. Couple of things, disclaimer, none of us here, we're medical professionals, we're not doctors, we're not mental health professionals, and we're not lawyers. Even though we talk about IDEA a lot, we do not practice law. We are professionals in our own field, and we share our lived experience and our professional experience. So none of the information that we share with you today can be considered medical, legal, or mental health advice. That's our disclaimer. So, all that being said, Jennifer, I'm going to give you the floor. Please, if you have questions for everybody that's here with us in Zoom, please use the chat or the Q&A feature. And Jennifer, let us know if you want us to say ask the questions as you go along, or you rather us wait till the end.
Yeah, for sure. If you have questions as I'm going, type them into the chat and or the Q&A, and I'll try to check in every few slides or so. I know when I go to trainings and someone says, hold them until the end, I then have trouble focusing on the content because my brain's thinking about my question that I didn't get an answer to. I don't want to do that to any of you. So throw it in there, and I will make sure to be checking in.
Thank
So.
you.
Absolutely. All right. So let me get my slides up. I have a million windows open on my computer, so I have to find them. There they are. And thank you so much for having me today. As Soren shared, my name's Jennifer Chicha, and I am one of the autism disorder specialists with the UCF Center for Autism and Related Disabilities. Today, I'm going to just do a brief autism overview. We could spend lots of time doing an autism overview, but we've only got about 45 minutes. So it's going to be fairly brief. And then I'm going to get into what is CARD and what do we do and how can we help. So that's kind of my overview for today. And I'm clicking and nothing's happening. Give me a second. Try that again. There we go. All right. So first, a brief look at autism. So one of the big things that I always emphasize when I do an autism overview, this is actually a famous quote, and I don't have it credited to someone because I've seen all different people's names credited to it. So I'm not really sure exactly who I should be giving it to. But when you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. And what that means is that autism is considered a spectrum. There are people with all different kinds of skills, all different kinds of interests, all different kinds of challenges. And there is no one thing that we can look at and say, oh, if we do that or if we see that, that's autism. So it's important to remember that it's very different for everybody. And some of the stuff I'll go over today, you might say, well, that's not my kid, or that doesn't sound like so-and-so. And that's perfectly fine because everybody with autism is different. We're just going to be kind of talking in generalities about commonalities that we see in many people with autism. Just to give you some of the statistics, autism is diagnosed in about 1 in 36 children in the United States today. Those numbers vary a little bit by country, by state, by locality. But when we're looking at the United States, about 1 in 36 is the current most up-to-date number. It is 4 times as commonly diagnosed in males as females. That doesn't necessarily mean the prevalence is 4 times as much in males than females, but that when we're looking at diagnoses, it is certainly more commonly diagnosed in males. We see all races, religions, and ethnicities are impacted. Many people with autism do experience lifelong needs. And currently here at CARD, we do have 24,000, actually it's over 24,000, I believe it's 24,300 something individuals right here in Central Florida that are impacted. And I'll go over what counties that encompasses when I go over CARD in a little bit. So a lot of people. Sorry, I'm like looking at our faces and I got to move you up for a second here because it's blocking my stuff. Okay. So I mentioned before that there is no one thing or even specific cluster of things that we can look at and say that's autism. When we're figuring out if someone has autism or not, we see a combination of symptoms. Now, I know that none of you, well, I shouldn't say I know that. I don't believe that any of you, I know that you're parents, so you're probably not also diagnosticians and you're probably not MDs that are going to be going out and diagnosing this in children. So you don't need to really remember what I'm about to go over in terms of like memorizing it or knowing it front and back. But the reason I'm going to go over this is the diagnostic criteria for autism. And the reason I think it's important is because it gives us an idea of what we need to be seeing in order for someone to have autism. So it tells us these are common characteristics. People with autism are going to often display these characteristics. So there are 2 areas that we see that are impacted for someone to be diagnosed with autism. And that the first area there is social communication. And the second area is kind of this catch-all phrase that's restricted, repetitive patterns of behavior, interests, and activities. So let's talk a little bit more about what that means. So for someone to be diagnosed with autism, we have to see impacts in 3 different areas of their social communication. So the first area is deficits in social emotional reciprocity. So the ability to build reciprocal relationships, go back and forth in conversations. That's all kind of encompassed in that social emotional reciprocity. Deficits in nonverbal communicative behaviors that are used for social interaction. So things like understanding body language and tone of voice, and picking up on those unwritten rules of social communication, all of that. And then the third one is deficits in developing, maintaining, and understanding relationships. I think that one kind of speaks for itself. So, what can some of those things look like? We see oftentimes that people with autism can be stressed about coping with social demands. So sometimes being in large social environments like school or social functions or activities can be stressful or overwhelming for them. Sometimes we see difficulty picking up on social cues because there is that nonverbal communication piece. Sometimes we see people that are behaving in ways that might be socially unexpected. So, not good or bad, just different than what we would expect someone to do. So, maybe they're using a different tone of voice, or you're having a conversation and the response that you're getting is just unexpected. It's not the way you would expect someone to respond. We see that frequently. Sometimes people with autism have that perfect spoken language that is very formal, or lacks expression that is maybe overly formal for the social situation, something that we're not necessarily, again, expecting, I should say. Understanding others in very literal ways, sometimes difficulty with implied meanings or figurative language, idioms, sometimes with that reading comprehension. So a lot of times I will talk to parents or teachers and they'll say, my child is struggling with understanding the stories that they're reading. And I'll say, well, we know that people with autism have difficulty understanding that social world and those social implications. So then if we're reading a story about the social world, it's going to be hard for them to understand what's happening in that story and why characters may behave a certain way. So that's one of the areas then to target, is working on helping them to understand the social world and not just focusing on straight reading. Struggling with building and maintaining social relationships, and also struggling with taking others' perspectives, understanding that different people have different backgrounds and thoughts, and that they might have a different idea than someone on the spectrum might have. So those are some of, not all encompassing, but some of the social challenges that we see some people with autism have. And then there was that catch-all area that I told you about. In order to be diagnosed with autism, you've got difficulties in at least two of these four areas. So instead of reading to you what's here, I have some slides. I'm going to kind of break down each one and what each one looks like. So the first one has to do with stereotyped or atypical motor movements. So, or adherence to routine, either of those things. We know almost everyone likes routine. I mean, I like to wake up in the morning and know what to expect and know what's going to happen and what's going to go on. That's just part of the human condition, I think. But when we have someone that has a higher than typical adherence to that routine, they have to follow that routine or else it becomes very stressful or upsetting to them. That's when we might start to look at, okay, this is atypical. This might be starting to head into the realm of where we might look at an autism diagnosis if there's also those other things going on. Also, if we see routines that are atypical or maybe not functional, so things where, for example, I think of my son this morning. My son has not been diagnosed with autism, but he definitely has some neurodivergencies going on. We're figuring out what those might be right now. But for him, he has to do things in a certain order. And those things are not necessarily functional. He doesn't necessarily need to do them that way. When it comes to brushing his hair, he has a very strong attachment to, we use like a little water bottle to spray water in his hair because he has bedhead from taking a shower the night before and then going to sleep. And then he wakes up and his hair is all over the place. And when we would put the water on his head, that was very upsetting to him. He didn't like if I like wet the brush and then because the water was dripping down. So we got a little spritz bottle, and he has become very fixated on that. Before we can spritz his hair, he has to spray me first with the spritz bottle. And now he's added a step in the last week, which wasn't there before. Then after he sprays me, he needs me to spray him like on his shirt. And then once that is over, he has to say the same ritual, which is make sure you close your eyes, which I'm sure at some point we said that to him. And so he has to say that first, and then I can spray his hair with the water. And if any of those steps are missing, he will go into full meltdown mode. Like that's devastating to him. We are not able to brush his hair. So not only is his reaction bigger and more atypical than what we would expect, but also that routine is fairly non-functional. There's no reason that he needs to spray me and then I need to spray him. And if we screw up that order, if I spray him and then he sprays me, again, that's a huge issue. So that's what I'm talking about when I say maybe not a functional routine that would need to be done. It's just kind of in his head, this is the order we need to do things. And this is just some more, I actually already kind of covered these in the last slide. It's just some more information about that. Then we might see intense or unusual interests in different things. So some of these things, if you look at this slide, these are all examples of areas that children that I've worked with had intense interests in. Some of them really pretty common. You've probably met a lot of kids, autistic, neurotypical, or other developmental disabilities, or anything in between. Children that have been interested in Thomas the Train. You've probably met a lot of children that are interested in Minecraft or I almost said Pikachu, which that is his name, but Pokemon or Disney World. Those are all pretty common. So you might think like, well, why would something like that maybe indicate autism? But when we're looking at the intensity of that interest, so when it's a child that maybe can only talk about Thomas the Train, and when we try to change that subject, they keep bringing it back to Thomas the Train. Even if I said, I had one kid that I was working with, and I said, oh, and what did you do at school today? And he told me he played with Thomas the Train, which he had to tell me. And then I said, well, how about in math? And then he said, in math, we should have counted Thomas the Trains. And, he just, no matter what, he just had to keep bringing it back to Thomas, even when it was completely unrelated. So is the intensity of that interest. And then sometimes they're unusual interests. I had one child, and you see some examples down there, the songbirds of South Africa, the Lynx bus map, the air conditioning unit. I had one child who could look at a ceiling fan and tell me like what the brand and model of that ceiling fan was, just looking at it. I didn't even know these brands existed for many of them. So just maybe a very atypical interest that he was very, very deep in and very good at. And then we see differences with sensory threshold. So there's two areas, I don't want to say areas, two intensities maybe that we can talk about when we talk about differences in sensory threshold. So there are individuals that are hypersensitive to sensory threshold differences, meaning that they overreact to sensory experiences. So these are our kids that maybe if they hear loud noises, they can become very upset or overwhelmed. If you try to get them to try a food that they don't want to try, that can be very overwhelming. Hypersensitive can be people that are, I'm trying to think of touching different textures, don't like to touch the sand, don't like to touch the goo that they're playing with, or the paint can't get on their hands, or all of those are different examples of hypersensitivity. So someone who reacts bigger than we would expect them to. And then there's people that have hyposensitivity to sensory experiences. So like they're seeking out more of it. These might be our kids, like my little guy, he loves to like run and crash his body into our furniture. So like he'll like jump his body onto the couch. Or sometimes he'll try to climb up the back of the couch and then jump off of it, which he's not allowed to do, but he does anyway sometimes. And that's sensory seeking. He also really likes running. Some of our kids really like spinning. Some of our older kids and adults will be like those thrill seekers that like want to go on all the roller coasters. And some of our younger kids love the swing or the slide. Those are all seeking out sensory experiences. Also, deep pressure is very common in this. Some kids might like a weighted vest or tight squeeze. So those are just some examples. You can see on this slide, and I'll send these to Soren. I don't know, do you have the ability to distribute these, Soren? Okay, I see her nodding. So I can send these to Soren so you can look at them more, but it gives you for all the different because we know we have multiple sensory systems: sight, smell, taste, touch, hearing, and then also our vestibular and proprioceptive, and interoception, which is our ability to feel the things that are happening inside of our body. So we have 8 different sensory systems, and you can be hyper or hypo in all of those different systems. And it's not like if you respond hypersensitive to this thing, you will always respond hypersensitive to all things. We can be hyper and hypo. So my son is bothered by loud noises, but wants to crash his body into the furniture. So he is both sensory aversive when it comes to loud noises and sensory seeking when it comes to vestibular. So you can kind of look at this little guy, and it breaks it down. When I send you the slides, you can look at some other examples and see maybe there's some things going on. I often find when I do school observations or home observations, that the teachers or the parents will explain to me maybe a quote bad behavior that's happening, and I'll realize very quickly, ooh, this, bad behavior is maybe actually sensory seeking behavior or sensory aversive behavior. So a lot of times we can explain why something might be happening, and if we can figure out why it's happening, we can put in interventions that might change that. So when someone's diagnosed with autism, this is fairly new within the last 10 years or so, when the DSM was updated, that they started diagnosing. They stopped saying things like Asperger's syndrome and autism and PDD-NOS and all of those different areas. And they just started identifying people as having autism spectrum disorder at either a level 1, level 2, or level 3. So level 1 just means that they require supports. Level 2, they require substantial supports, so a little bit more. And level 3 would be requiring very substantial support. So these are individuals that need a lot more help to get through their day as independently as possible. I do always like to point out that autism is based on neurological differences. Sometimes people will think that it is a behavioral disorder, and while our neurological differences might lead to differences in behavior, obviously it does, or else we wouldn't have any way of diagnosing autism. That doesn't mean it's a behavioral disorder. It is based on the differences in the way the brain processes information. And I won't go through each of these. Again, you'll get the slides. I know I'm limited on time here, but you can see all these different areas of the brain are impacted in people with autism. And under each one, it tells you, okay, this is the area of the brain. So like, for example, that one on the left, that frontal lobe, it shows you this is where it is in the front here. And these are all the things that the frontal lobe does. It helps us with our planning, our problem solving, our impulse restraint, understanding others' behaviors, and a lot more too. Those are just some examples. So you can kind of see all the different areas that are impacted and what are the implications of those areas being impacted when you get these slides and look through them. I also hear a lot of times that people will say that child didn't make eye contact with me, they couldn't make eye contact with me, they wouldn't make eye contact with me, whatever it might be. And again, in talking about neurological differences, I love this slide. This was a study that was done in 2005 where they hooked children up to different brain, I'm using the technical term here, like brain electrode thingies that measured the brain waves. They were measuring the rate of perspiration, and they were able to measure the respiratory rate. And what they found they compared children with autism with neurotypical children, and they gave the direction about making eye contact. And what they found is that when the neurotypical child was making eye contact, that sensory information came in through the eyes, relayed back to the amygdala just the way we want it to. They would exhibit that appropriate emotional response, and this was a pleasurable experience for them. When the child with autism made that direct eye contact, the information went in an altered way, and that triggered the amygdala to go into what we call fight or flight. It triggered the autonomous nervous system is the, pretty name for that, but it basically triggered a fight or flight response. It raised the child's heart rate, respiration, and perspiration. And then what do we do if something's doing that to us? If something puts us in fight or flight, what are we going to do? And I know you can't answer me because I think you guys are like separate from me somehow. But what we do is we fight or we flight, right? So when I have people that force eye contact, they will often say the child looks away, they refuse to do it, or that the child becomes upset or aggressive or tantrums or that type of thing. So this is why there's a difference in the way that information is relayed to the brain. We also know that children or people, I say children because I believe you're all parents of probably school-age children, but people with autism tend to process visual information much better than auditory information. So this was a really cool study that was done, I believe, at the University of Pittsburgh. And what they did is they did visual imaging of different people's brains when they showed them different types of information. And so these are examples of brains that they pulled from the study. The one on the left is an example of a neurotypical brain, and it shows you the areas of that individual's brain that lit up when they showed them visual and auditory information. So you can see it's pretty evenly dispersed. You can see the parts of the brain that information was processed in, and that they could pretty much do both. The brain is reacting as we would expect in both areas. Then they also did this with people with autism. And on the right there, you see the autistic brain. And I didn't orient you to this before. I'm sorry. I just said they were about equal. So the pink is the areas of the brain that lit up when looking at visual information. I don't know if you want to call that green or blue or teal or whatever, but that color, that other color, is the area of the brain that lit up when they were processing auditory information. So back when I was saying in the neurotypical brain, that was about even, you can see where it's spread out. Look at the example of the autistic person's brain. You can see very clearly there that there is huge capacity all over the brain processing that visual information, taking lots of stuff in from there. But then that auditory information was really very little of the brain was working to process that because it was coming in differently. So we know people with autism are strong visual learners and visual processors, and we should use that to our advantage when we're sharing information, teaching our kids new skills, whatever it might be that you're working on with them. Generally speaking, because of the neurological differences that exist, children with autism generally do very well with structure, predictability, and routine. They benefit from receiving information visually, so either written down, if they can read that information, or with pictures if they're younger and maybe are not able, I'm sorry, I should say pictures if they are younger and or not able to read that information. And anytime for anybody that we compare written with picture information, that's helpful for the brain too. I always point out, sometimes parents will say, well, they don't need pictures, they can read. And I'll say, understood. But also when I think back to like when I was in college, like I was a good reader, I was in college, but my textbooks a lot of times had pictures and diagrams, and it wasn't because I couldn't read, but it's because those types of supports help the brain process information. So written is a visual, pictures are a visual, and I usually recommend when we can combine those things, all the better to help people understand information. Sometimes we see a lack of safety awareness, and this became, well, it didn't become, I shouldn't say, I mean, this has been going on for a very long time, but I think it became more mainstream known in 2024 when we had a very tragic year of drowning deaths in children with autism, where we saw a lot of children that were wandering away from a safe person or a safe place, seeking out water, did not necessarily have that awareness that this is unsafe, that maybe I don't know how to swim, or even if they did know how to swim, that maybe, it's a little bit different in a murky, dirty lake with, who knows what that you're stepping on. Maybe it's soft and squishy. Maybe it drops off more quickly than you expected, whatever. And we did see 28 children in the state of Florida drown last year that had autism, 28 children with autism, 105 total. So we really saw that lack of safety awareness kicking in that situation. And thank goodness it's gotten a lot of media attention, because that's been able to bring this to parents' knowledge, and so that you can learn steps to take to prevent that from happening, because there are steps that can be taken. And I'll just quickly give a little shameless plug, if you don't mind, Soren. If you're like, wow, I didn't realize that happened. That's really scary. I wonder what those steps are that I can take. Or even if you're like, I did know that happened, and what are the steps I can take? I am going to be doing a virtual webinar on April 9th, where we're going to be going over steps to prevent wandering and drowning in children with autism. So please, please, please come check that out. I think I have my website at the end, and you can sign up right from our website. If I don't, I'll type that in before we go. But yeah, please come and see that information, because it's very sad, and it's happening way too often. We talked about people with autism have a different sensory threshold than others. We talked about differences in communication. And we also often see, I lightly touched on eating issues, because sometimes that sensory experience and different textures or tastes or whatever might make someone uncomfortable. But I did not highlight that we also tend to see a lot of sleep difficulties in autistic people. So that is another commonality. I have been keeping an eye on the chat and the Q&A as I go. I have not seen anything pop up on there, but please remember, if you guys do have questions as I'm going, just throw them in there. I am happy to answer as we go. So that kind of is my extremely abbreviated autism overview. Hopefully that was helpful. I know a couple times I even tripped myself up, because I'm like trying to get as much information to as little period of time as possible. So I hope that helped. But let's move into like, what is CARD and how can we help? And again, if you had questions about that content, just throw them in, and I'll make sure to get to them in just a minute. Okay, so CARD stands for the Center for Autism and Related Disabilities. We are a state-funded program through the FLDOE throughout the entire state of Florida. So our center, the UCF, actually I should show you the next one before I say that. Hold on. Our center is the UCF Center for Autism, and we cover that little like middle right side of Florida that you see there in teal. But there are 7 universities scattered throughout the state of Florida that each have a region. So if you have family members or friends in any county, anywhere in the state of Florida, they can get support from their CARD center. We do have, now this, I know this slide is outdated, but I do not know, I know our total, which I'll tell you in a few minutes, but I do not know the other universities' totals, but we absolutely are providing support to well over 60,000 people with an autism diagnosis across the state. Our counties that we cover are Seminole, Brevard, Osceola, Orange, Sumter, Lake, and Volusia counties. And we are providing services. Oh, sorry. I thought if I clicked, it would pop up there. We're providing services to, I mentioned before, over 24,000 people in those 7 counties. So that's where I said that last number. I know that's outdated, because if we, one of 7 universities, are providing services to 24,000, I'm pretty sure the other 6 universities aren't only making up another 36, so they're definitely doing more than that. I will say we do currently, there have been times where Miami has, University of Miami CARD has been ahead of us, but we currently do serve the greatest number of autistic people out of any CARD center in the state, which I think is pretty cool and exciting. That it doesn't necessarily mean that there's more autistic people here. It means that more autistic people have gotten the information about CARD and registered with us. So that's why I think it's pretty cool and exciting. So this slide, again, is outdated. We have not compiled. I think actually we have compiled, but I don't think it's shown up in a slide yet. The 2023, 2024 numbers, but I will tell you they are higher. So in 2022 to 2023, our fiscal year runs July 1st to June 30th. That's why there's overlap in our year. We provided services to 20,788 individuals. For those 20,788 individuals, we engaged in 24,441 individual and direct family assistant contacts. So that means we directly interacted with over 24,000 times. And just to give you an idea, currently we have 15 of us on staff. At that time, we might have been 13. But either way, let's just say 15 for 24,000 direct service contacts, direct assistance. We provided 4,341 technical assistance contacts. So that means someone either at a school or in the community contacted us and said, in some capacity, we're working with people with autism and we would like some advice on how to do X, Y, or Z. And we were able to provide assistance to 4,341 times. We did 699 school and home visits. We attended 247 IEP meetings. We did 131 community-based observations. We did 345 training presentations and did 48 support groups. So that was 2 years ago. Every year these numbers go up. But just to give you an idea, sometimes people will say to me, so what does CARD actually do? And as you'll see in the coming slides, that can be hard for me to explain to someone because we work with people that are any age. We work with the youngest I've ever had, I think, was 14 months. And the oldest I currently have is, I believe he's 59 now. But I do know one of my coworkers has someone who I believe is 84 now on their caseload. So the entire lifespan, no matter if you have level 1, level 2, or level 3 autism, we work with you. So it's kind of hard when someone says, well, what can you do? Well, that depends. How old's your kid? What are their needs? What are you working on? Is it school-based or home-based or work-based or community-based or, what's going on? But to quantify it, this is all the stuff we did in 2022, 2023. So it's a lot of different things. For someone to register with us, we do accept an autism spectrum disorder diagnosis. And when I say we do accept, I mean the legislation that the state created accepts. It's not like somebody sitting in the office over at UCF CARD is saying, oh yeah, we'll take that. It's the state created legislation that says this is what you're allowed to do. So we work with anybody that has an autism diagnosis, anybody that has a dual diagnosis of deaf blindness, or if you have a single sensory impairment, like you are deaf or blind, and then you have another developmental disability that is recognized under the Agency for Persons with Disabilities, we can work with you as well. Additionally, because we work with people of all ages and autism spectrum disorder has only been the catch-all term for about the last 10 years, we do work with people that received back before the Asperger's syndrome diagnosis and the PDD-NOS diagnosis, as well as autism, and then additionally child disintegrative disorder and Rett syndrome. So those are all the areas that we can work with. I often get people asking me if we work with children with ADHD, because they'll say, well, ADHD is another neurodivergency. That's kind of related. And again, like I hear what you're saying, but it's not somebody sitting at the card office saying, yeah, we'll do it. It's that the state has developed these are the people you can work with. So unfortunately, ADHD is a no at this time, but these are all the things we can. So what do we do with all of those contacts? We are not direct therapy providers. As you can imagine, I said we have 15 of us and 24,000 registered people. So it would be impossible for me to be like that direct service provider that's going out to their home and doing ABA therapy every week. That's not going to happen. What I can do though, is I can help families find those resources. So if your child needs ABA therapy or they need language, OT, counseling, life coaching, targeted case management, and so many more things. We can help you find those resources. We do keep a resource guide The only way people can get into our resource guide is if they were recommended to us by families that are registered with us. So we're not just having like, a speech and language pathologist call us up and saying, hey, I just opened a new company to do language therapy. I want to be in your guide. Doesn't work that way. We have to have people coming to us and saying, yep, I worked with that person and they were fantastic. And we have to have multiple people saying that. And that's how you get into our guide. So we can help you find those services. We also can help if maybe you don't need ABA. Maybe you just have this one behavioral thing that's going on that you need some help with, or this one language thing that's going on that you need some help with, or whatever. We could come out, we can do a home visit. We can help you troubleshoot that situation. We can make visuals to help your child to learn whatever skill it is that they might need. Model things for you. So we can, I know I said before, like we're not coming out to the home and providing ongoing therapy, and that's true, we're not, but we can come out to your home, meet with you and your family, and work with you and the child to teach up a skill. And then if it becomes, oh, you need more than that, we can help direct you to some providers that can give you more than that. We also do go into schools. Most frequently, we are in homes and schools because if you're a person, if you're a child that is school age, you spend most of your time at home or at school. So that's kind of where we spend most of our time. But we can also go into the community. We've gone to grocery stores and playgrounds and doctor's offices and you name it, probably. And we've been there to support. So we can do all of those types of things. I did mention that we provide supports through the lifespan. So when your child ages out of school, they do not age out of card services. We, in addition to all those places I named that we go, we've also gone to a lot of workplaces and helped people there. We've helped people to find jobs and keep jobs. And I've helped people figure out how to navigate their dating life and, all kinds of things that adults deal with too, that is not just child issues. I already kind of went over this in the last slide. Skip to the next one. We do technical assistance, which I mentioned before. So the direct support that we provide, that's like little Johnny is registered with CARD. His teacher is having difficulty with getting him to complete his math work. She asks if we can come out and observe and give her some ideas. That would be like a direct support. Technical assistance is like Johnny's teacher teaches some kids with autism. She's looking for some ideas as to how she can support kids with autism in her class. So it's more general. It's like, hey, I work with people with autism. I would like some ideas. So that's technical assistance. It differs just ever so slightly from that direct support. So direct support is how do I help Johnny? Technical assistance is how do I help people with autism in general? We do public awareness events. You probably see us out in the community. If you go to different walks or fairs, resource fairs, or just for fun events we'll be out at. I know I'm going. Oh no, I can't go to that one. Someone else is going. The YMCA is having a children's resource fair. I was asked to go to it and I can't because it's my son's birthday. But the YMCA is having a children's resource fair at the end of the month. We're having someone there. I know Early Steps is doing some trainings for their families. We're going to have people there. All kinds of different events where we get the information out about CARD and autism. And if it's specific, there's a safety event in May I'll be going to talking, sharing information about drowning prevention. So all different things that we go to. And then we do trainings, parent and professional trainings. So we do like what I'm doing right here, or we do also regional workshops, which are for professionals throughout the state. And those are usually day-long workshops. We go to schools. I do a lot of school training when those teachers have those short Wednesdays. And maybe some people have said to me, like, why do they get extra time on Wednesdays? Well, surprise, they don't. On Wednesdays, what they do is they spend a lot of time going to professional development or going to different types of meetings or getting information. And we do a lot of those. We're there a lot of times helping schools and helping teachers. We do an annual conference every January, usually Martin Luther King Day weekend. So I don't have the date in front of me right now, but if you look up what weekend is Martin Luther King Day, that will tell you. And that is every January. There is cost involved with that, whereas pretty much all of our programs do not have cost, but it's very minimal. It's a 3-day conference, and usually it's about $100 that is charged to go to 3 days of speakers, and Friday is always free. So we do that as well. We also have this really cool benefit at UCF that the other centers do not have, which is it's a nonprofit called PALS, stands for Providing Autism Links and Supports. And this program was created because, as I mentioned before, CARD was written by legislators. They said, this is what CARD is, and this is what CARD's able to do. And we found that there were some gaps there, things that we wanted to be able to help people with, but that we weren't able to do because it wasn't part of our legislation. It wasn't something we were allowed to do, like running social groups or running family programs or different didactic programs that we have going on. None of that was supported under our legislation. So PALS was created, and basically they do all those things that we can't do. Their mission is to support the individuals that are registered with UCF card. So if you're registered with card, they have programming. Oops, I'm sorry, I clicked by accident. They have groups and programming for all ages and all areas of need, or all levels of need, I should say. So if you're registered with card and you're interested in learning more about what you could maybe do with PALS, reach out to your autism disorder specialist and they can talk to you about what programs would be a good fit for your family or your child. Just so you all know, we do have an event coming up at Senses Park on April 12th. We have a family event. So I believe that's from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. You can go to our website, sign up for that event. It's for any of our registered families. So if your child has autism, and they're registered with us, please come out. I believe that your Osceola Autism Disorder Specialist will be there. I am not one of the Osceola Disorder Specialists, but I also will be there. And we would love to see you. So that's one of the many things that PALS does that CARD would not be able to do. Just to explain, like I said, we can't be ongoing service providers. There are certain things that we cannot do. We can't help you in an emergency crisis situation like I need someone right now. The reason we can't do that is because there's 15 of us. We're out doing stuff. I'm doing this training, and later today I'll be at a school. And earlier today I was in an IEP meeting, and tonight I'm doing a support group. So we're doing things. So if instead of calling 911, you're calling me, that's a bad idea. You need to be calling the people that can be immediately available to you, because I might not be available for a day or two. I might be booked up. Certainly, we can help you troubleshoot situations. If there is some type of crisis, please let me know what happened so that we can say, okay, well, what are the next steps? Because crises don't end at the moment that the crisis is over. There's still things we have to do. So we can help you with that piece. Just if there's a crisis happening, make 911 your first call, not Jennifer, because Jennifer is not necessarily going to be able to get to you. We can't provide case management because case management requires a lot of man hours. I mean, I talk to the case managers. I know they're like, oh man, I'm exhausted. I have 25 people on my caseload. And I'm like, yeah, I have, I believe, 840. So obviously I can't do the job that case manager is doing. They're busting their butt for those 24 people. You'd be getting almost nothing from me if you wanted me to be your case manager, because I would have to do it for 840. So we can't do that. We are not educational advocates. We can go to IEP meetings and talk about best practices. We can make recommendations that would be helpful for people with autism. If I've seen your child at school, I can make recommendations for, here are some things I think would be helpful for this child at school. We can do those things, but we are not advocates. We're not going to file due process, or we're not going to be saying, well, according to the law, blah, blah, blah. We're just there to help give ideas and suggestions and just help make everything better. And we can't, as Sora mentioned earlier, we are not doctors. We're not medical doctors. We're not giving you medical advice, diagnoses, or prescriptions or recommendations about prescriptions. I have said to parents, maybe you should talk to your doctor and see if medication would be helpful. But I haven't said, hey, your kid needs Ritalin. I can't do that. I am not a doctor. I will not do that. We can't provide financial assistance. The state gives us, as I'm sure you can imagine, just the funding that they think that we need to do our job, because we would have more than 15 people for our 24,000 if we had money to just be given out. We don't. We get the funding that we need, and that's it. That's all we've got. And then we don't duplicate services of other agencies. If there's somebody else that's doing it already, we're going to refer you to those people. This is our information, our website. You can see at the top there is www.ucf-card.org. You can go there and sign up for the drowning prevention training, the event at Senses Park in a couple weeks. You can check out the other things on our calendar. You can get all of that there. You can also register with us, but it is kind of hidden at the bottom. So if your child has autism and they're not registered and you want them to be, use that QR code because that'll take you right to the place you want to go. Um, and I'll come back to this in a minute in case someone needs to scan it. Let me just make sure. Yep. And then I'm just saying thank you. And there's our information. So I'm going to go back to that QR code in case you need it. So that was everything I had. 5 minutes to spare. Look at that. Sorry. I actually wished I had gone a little quicker for questions, but it doesn't look like you guys had any. Um, so yeah, I'm here if you have any questions. And if not, I guess I'll turn it back over to Soren and say thank you for letting me share that information.
Wow, thank you so much, Jennifer. That was really good. Awesome information, very valuable. I appreciate your being here and sharing all this with us today. If you send me the slides, I can add them to, I see a question popping up. I can add them to our digital fold flyer. I can make a screenshot of this and put it like very on top of the flyer as well. It,
Perfect.
I have a question. It says, does the student have to be a senior at high school before enrolling to the services? And the student is in ninth grade.
No, not at all. The youngest person on my caseload ever was about 14 months. I have who I would consider literal babies on my caseload. I have kids that are a year, 2 years old. So no, we work with people of all ages. And it's different for all ages. So your son in ninth grade, we're going to be talking to you a lot about preparing for transition and what are the next steps look like. And then when he's out of high school, we're going to be helping him with different things than we are now and different things than we would have when he was 3. So yeah, please register no matter what age.
Great. And then we had somebody in the Q&A said that they are going to be at the Census Park.
Yay, that's wonderful. I'm looking forward to seeing you there.
Hopefully, I'll be there too. I'm trying to work my schedule to be there.
Awesome. I love it. Thank you all. Can't wait. I hope I see 10 people there. So I hope all 10 of you are at our thing.
Yes, yes. Stephanie, any questions you have or do you want to add before we wrap up for the day?
No, I really appreciate your work. I mean, I like how concise it was, a lot of
Mhm.
information, but just all in one location. We also have speech pathologists at every single school now. All of our schools in Osceola County are completely staffed. So if you have questions about their communication, you can always reach out to me. I'm at district office, but the schools where your children go to school, there are resources there as well. CARD is wonderful about supporting us. We wouldn't know what to do without their partnership, but you can always also ask those questions, right at your school if you need to see their therapist. But otherwise, we're just always very thankful that we get to collaborate with CARD and with parents to work on the success of their kids. So if there's ever anything that we can do to support them, we're definitely there.
Thank you. We're glad to work with Osceola County too.
Thank you. And we are also very thankful for the partnership we'd have with
Yes.
UCF Card. We refer all our parents that have children with autism to you guys. Like one of the first questions, are you registered with Card? No, then you have to do this. Here's the link. And yeah, we collaborate in many of the interagency transition groups. So wonderful. Thank you so, so much, Jennifer, for being with us today. Thank you so much, Stephanie, for being here. And we are at the end. I will be sharing this recording with Sarah McKinney, and she will be posting it on a website. It's going to be also on the FND PEN YouTube channel. And we wish everybody a good rest of your day. We hope to see you all at Census Park on the 12th, right? And I wish everybody a good day, and we will see each other in 2 weeks, I believe, again for an afternoon insight with Osceola School District. Have a good
Great.
rest of your day.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.